these are the American forces that Gabriel picked out in order to attack the Soviets. He's chosen to conduct a deliberate attack. In the center there is his M1 tank company commander, flanked by two M1 platoons of 2 tanks each. In the back, he has the M109 howitzer battery. To the right is the observer, and to the left is the VADS. Of note, the 3 howitzers in the middle do have the bomblets, so they're going to use the larger salvo template when they attack, really hoping to pound the Soviets in defense. Behind them we have 2 Cobra helicopters in a platoon, and lastly in the front we have a mechanized platoon minus. It has 3 SAW teams, 2 Dragon missile teams, and they're all mounted in M113s. Altogether, that's 60 points of American forces ready to take it to the Soviets. So these are the forces I picked out for the Soviets to defend with. This will be my first time actually in defense with Soviets, so trying some things out in preparation for future games against Simon. And Gabe's agreed to be my opponent. So what we have is a T-72 tank battalion. Right in the center there is the commander. He's flanked by 2 company minuses of 4 T-72s each. And then 2 SA-13 Gophers for some air defense. Behind them is it's a company minus of BMP-2 mechanized infantry. So that's a total of 10 guys, 10 BMP-2s, a couple of machine guns in there, and then I've added anti-aircraft missile team as well over on the right. So altogether, 60 points of Soviets. See how well they can defend. So today's mission is no retreat. The Soviets are in defense with the American forces on the attack. It is the long table. So the Soviets have the right side. You see the Soviet place objective back here behind the air defense. And then a Soviet infantry company minus holds the center objective right on the road placed by the Americans. They placed 2 minefields on the right flank, effectively channeling the Americans down the middle. And that plan has worked because in deployment, the American forces have put their 2 M1 tank platoons on the road to strike right into the heart of the Soviet lines. They're supported by some VADS in the center. There are 2 Cobra helicopters behind this building for nice cover. And then the infantry platoon minus over on the right, supported by the tank commander. And then back here, we have the 109s and the observer ready to lay fire down on the Soviet forces. So should be very good. Just a reminder, the Americans have to take either one of these 2 objectives, or if the Soviets hold it by the start of turn 6 or any turn thereafter, either one of these 2 objectives, then they win. So hopefully those Soviet reserves come on quickly. And lastly, it is night fight, big advantage for the Americans. On turn 1, the Americans advanced forward, only leaving 1 VADS behind as he got bogged down on that little hedgerow. Everyone else successfully has moved up and dispersed, firing into the Soviet lines. That firing began with the M109s opening up from the back using their bomblets. They scored hits on 2 Soviet bases. One of them failed their save, but firepower was unsuccessful, but it did manage to pin the unit immediately. And then the M1s who moved up all made their night fighting rolls to shoot. Did pretty good at hitting the Russians with their machine guns, but in the cases of failed saves, were not able to make their firepower check. Same with the commander and VADS down here. Lots and lots of hits, but no actual dead Soviets yet. These 113s were searching for targets, but at night, that Soviet infantry was just a little bit too far away for them to see. So the Americans in turn 1 managed to move up, starting to threaten the Soviet objectives, and has pinned this big unit. We'll have to see whether or not they can unpin, and the Soviets can bring any reserves in. Okay, at the beginning of Soviet turn 1, the ambushers were revealed to be hiding in and behind this cornfield. The 5 BMP-2s remained stationary while these 2 BMP-2s and the unit leader right there moved from behind the cornfield, 2 of them popping out in order to engage the 113s that were running up on them. The 10th one is back here in the woods, did not do anything. After that, the Soviets rolled a 5 to bring on one T-72 company. 2 of them used the stabilizers to come on. The commander relocated a little bit to be closer to those T-72s, and the infantry rallied but remained in their foxholes, choosing not to shoot, making it tougher for the Americans to target them for at least a little while longer. And the shooting phase began by opening up with 3 of the T-72s that had line of sight into the 2 M1s that had shot the previous turn. Managed to hit once, needing a 5 because of night fighting, but Gabe made his armor save, and so he was fine. At that point, focused our attention with 5 of the BMP-2s targeting the American commander, successfully destroying him. We had 2 hits. Gabe failed both of his armor saves, and I rolled 1 for the pen to go through and blew him up. While these 2 BMPs, after they moved, fired 4 shots on the Americans, hitting once, punched right through the armor, but only managed to bail out 113, so we'll see if he goes ahead and remounts. It's a very competitive game right now. Could go either way. We do need to see if the American commander manages to jump into another vehicle. Gabe, if you can roll 1 dice on a 3 or higher, your commander's not dead. That is a 6. Which vehicle do you want him to jump into to be your new commander? That vehicle back there. Okay, so turn 2 for the Americans. Let's see if they continue to press the attack. Okay, on turn 2 for the Americans, it started with, of course, undogging the VADs, and then he managed to remount the 113 that was bailed out over here, blitzed out his infantry very cleverly, moving them into the woods, and then moved the 113s back to support. As far as his tanks, moved them up aggressively and into the Soviet lines. We'll get to assault in a little bit. In the shooting phase, he started by opening up with his artillery, regular rounds this time. He hit twice, but didn't manage to kill anybody. Of course, ranging in the first time because the ranged in marker was no issues there. Then the helicopters opened up, managing to destroy 1 and bailing 1 BMP-2. Then he opened up with his infantry. I managed to destroy 1 and bail that second one out. His tanks contributed by killing 1. And then these VADs here managed to destroy 2 infantry bases. Combined 11 shots, managed to put some damage through, and he did really well with his firepower for the foxholes. These T-72s were engaged by those 2 M1s. He hit twice, but I made 1 armor and then matched the other armor. He made firepower, so that T-72 starts the round bailed out. Very interestingly, he ran through Soviet infantry with an assault with those 2 M1s. He didn't actually kill anybody, but the Soviets failed on the 3+ counterattack roll, moving a bunch of these Soviets out of their foxholes. Also let loose with a bunch of RPGs for the Overwatch portion, but needing 6s to hit. They're missing wildly in the night as those tanks just rolled through them. So we'll go Soviet turn 2. See if they get any reserves in and start equaling this thing up. Soviet turn 1, we almost had them. So start off by not rolling well for reserves, failed to bring anybody on. I moved the 3 tanks that were not bailed out at the start of the round into the cornfield. This one's still kind of flapping out there in the wind. He did not make his remount check. Well, I moved the company commander back behind that barn to start getting some flanking shots in future turns. The infantry pretty much stayed in place. I did bog down this BMP-2 while the unit leader moved around to the left for some more shots. And the 2 bailed out BMP-2s managed to get in. So for shooting, we started out with the tanks opening fire on these 2 M1s. They did a pretty good job hitting. Gabe equaled with a 3 on his armor. Managed my firepower check. I did bail him out. Forcing a morale check could have really turned the tide of the game if he would have failed that, but he rolled a 5, so the M1s are staying there. We'll probably bail back in. The shooting from the BMP-2s at the tanks was ineffective, unfortunately. Gabe made all his armor checks, and then 2 shots from the unit leader at those 113s failed. Managed to get my anti-aircraft missiles to hit one of these Cobras. It was a 7 to hit because of the darkness and because gone to ground and because of the cover and all that good stuff that the American helicopters get. But Gabe rolled a 5+. Once again, it was almost there, but he rolled a 5+ on his aircraft save. So American forces are very much still intact and are looking to really push the Soviets probably off that objective as quickly as possible. We got to start destroying some tanks, otherwise this is going to be all for naught in the Soviet defense. So when we go to the Americans, turn 3. So on American turn 3, Gabe kept his M1s back a little bit to allow his artillery to repeat on the target that they've already acquired, while moving these guys none as well. Pretty much kept everything in place. Gabe, did I miss anything that you moved? I think it's mostly in place. You just shuffled that tanks around a little bit. Very deadly shooting round, starting with the artillery. Ranged in, managed to get one of the guys who was out of the foxhole and kill him, and the machine gun team that was there failed its save, and since he was using regular rounds, managed to make his firepower to blast them out of the foxholes. And those two M1s targeting these tanks down here managed to hit twice. I failed one armor save. Gabe made his firepower check and destroyed one. They're still in good order. They really need that tank to come back in to help out. Adding to the carnage over here was the Bads shooting through. Managed to kill an additional unit, so the Soviets are getting beat up on the infantry. And then, worst of all, between the M1s there and the Dragons here, they managed to destroy 3 of the BMP-2s. This one closest to me was actually bailed out, and this one was bogged down. The unit leader, with the unit not in good morale, had to take a morale check. Would have passed on a 3-up, but he rolled a 2. So he ditched, and they thermited their other 2 vehicles. So now the BMPs are gone. This is getting a little desperate for the Soviets, but more reserves will arrive this turn. So we'll see if we can counter this attack. Okay, Soviet turn 3 began with the T-72 bailing back into the tank, moving into this cornfield. And the reserves automatically came on, and they moved up into this cornfield. They're going to be very tough to hit as they have not shot, so the Americans will have to find their range on them using their sights, their thermal imaging. The commander popped out in order to get a side shot on the tank, but I was 0 for all of my shooting this round, so the commander missed. This unit attempted to shoot the helicopters, as did these, but needing 7s again, didn't manage to hit the helicopters at all, so they remain unmolested. So unless something changes real quick, Gabe's in a good position to start winning this game. So on to Americans turn 4. The American attack continues in turn 4, and the first time on the channel somebody's used smoke. So these M109 howitzers back here with the observer managed to draw a line of sight right through there to lay down a smoke screen to protect his tank's left flank. They managed to do some machine gunning and then assault. And in assault, they killed one of the Russian infantry. Went back and forth for a little bit before the Russians failed their counterattack roll. And they've moved back in order to regroup. It's looking ugly. Over here, a bunch of combined shots managed to take out one of the infantry bases, while the helicopters fired all the way across the board, managed to land 2 hits on the tanks, but only managed to penetrate armor on 1. Gabe failed his firepower check, so it's just bailed out. We're going to need him to get back in if we stand any chances of winning. So on to the Soviet turn 4. Once again, the stalwart Soviet infantry have rallied to begin the Soviet turn 4, moving into this wood line as they let the T-72s come up and handle the heavy business. Unfortunately, when I moved them out of this cornfield and up, had to use stabilizers on the front one to contest this objective to make sure Gabe doesn't win. And then these 2 guys just moved normally when they shot, didn't manage to kill anything or hit anything. While the commander stayed on the other side of the smoke because he had to, was able to shoot at the Americans, but not able to hit as well because I believe he needed a 6 because it was at night and through smoke. And then lastly, this T-72 company came around. They are using their regular cross-country dash speed in order to get in position for future turns. Anti-aircraft weapons still not able to hit these Cobras. We only managed to land one hit so far. Of course, Gabe saved it that one time. We haven't been able to hit him since. The American pilot's flying with much skill and panache. So on to American turn 5, desperate times. So the Americans are absolutely embarrassing the Soviets in defense here. Gabe just kind of shuffled around a little bit. These guys moved out from behind this PMP-2 smoke screen in order to engage these T-72s. Combined with the fire from the helicopters, managed to destroy all three, so that tank company is now gone. These two M1s plan to attack those 4 T-72s, but only managed to roll double 2s when it came to night fighting range, and since those T-72s did not shoot, they weren't automatically able to be seen. Gabe instead focused at the battalion commander, hitting all 4 times and destroying him. So I think I shall play one more turn to see what my T-72s can do. Also, Gabe wants me to point out that these 113s moved up quickly to threaten this objective. So they moved up 10 inches, unable to dash because of the proximity to those anti-aircraft missile systems. But he did successfully issue a follow me order to move an additional 4 inches, so 14 inches altogether. There's no way the Soviets are going to be able to hold that objective. So now that I look at it, we're going to go ahead and call the game here. It's been a lot of fun. I learned a lot of stuff, so this should help me out when I play Simon in the campaign as he gets ready to counterattack my Warsaw Pact forces, perhaps giving me a chance. So hope you enjoyed this short field maneuver battle report.